So good morning, students. Once again, welcome to module 2, the second lecture. So can you see the slide? Can you hear me? Am I audible? Can anyone reply?
Yes, sir. Good to
Yes,
go.
sir.
Okay. Kindly mute your audio, students. Well, in the previous class, we discussed the concept of ergonomics. Now, by this time, all of you have understood the meaning of ergonomics. You can see the slide over there. Ergonomics is defined as the science of conforming the workplace and all its elements to the worker. So basically, students, ergonomics is it consists of the scientific principles applied in minimizing the physical stress associated with the workplace. So we are doing a quick recap of the things or the concepts what we have discussed in the earlier class. Okay. Now, after that, we even understood that ergonomics is one of the important process of designing or arranging the workplaces, products, and even the systems so that they can fit the people who use them. So ergonomics is a very important branch of science that aims to learn about the human abilities and the limitations, and then apply this learning to improve the people's interaction with the products, systems, and environments. Now, even we understood why ergonomics is so important in today's scenario. Because as you people only have informed me in the earlier class, health and safety of human life plays a very, very important role. Because we are seeing now in the present COVID-19 pandemic situation, how many people are affected and how many people every day are losing their life. So it is basically why? It is basically because of the workplace culture. It might be due to a lot of reasons people are losing their life. So we'll not discuss much about the reasons for that, but the total economic cost of work related to injuries and illness. So what this ergonomics, it aims to create the safe, comfortable, and the productive workspaces by bringing human abilities and limitations into the design of a workspace, which including the individual's body size, strength, skill, speed, sensory abilities, and even attitudes. So we have discussed all these concepts. I'm doing a quick revision of why ergonomics is so important in this particular scenario. Then very important point what we discussed was the advantages or the benefits of ergonomics. See, when we have a proper healthy diet and a very good environment to work, so obviously ergonomics is designing a job to fit the worker, so the work is safer and more efficient. So implementing ergonomic solutions can make employees more comfortable, and in turn, what happens? We can increase the productivity. So even we discussed in the earlier class, ergonomics is so important because when you're doing a job, so without your knowledge, sometimes students, I think you have noticed this, your body will be stressed due to an awkward posture or due to an extreme temperature, or sometimes due to repeated movement, your musculoskeletal system is affected. We called it as MSDs, that is musculoskeletal disorders. We call it as MSDs. So what they are basically, they are the conditions that affect the body's muscles, joints, ligaments, and even the nerves. Right? So we even understood some of the benefits of ergonomics in the present scenario. So how we can improve the health and safety of the worker or the employees. Then we can have a higher discipline or moral throughout the workplace. Please see the slide over there. Then we can have improved quality. Now, when we say about quality, because when we implement the ergonomic improvements, we can reduce the risk factor that lead to discomfort. So by that, we can improve the quality of the work or the environment over there, or the quality of the employees over there. Then the fourth benefit of ergonomics is we can improve the productivity. See, ergonomic improvements can reduce the primary risk factors. For what? For musculoskeletal disorders. So workers are more efficient, productive, and they'll be having a greater job satisfaction. I think some of you have experienced, if you have a stomach ache or a body ache, so your productivity for that particular day comes down or decreases. So obviously in the same way, if you want to increase the productivity, your body or the system should be perfect. Then last but not the least is we can improve the competitiveness. That is very, very important. That means we can reduce the absenteeism among the employees. So today in the manufacturing sector, the one of the biggest challenges, I think all your mechanical engineers or electrical engineers, wherein a lot of physical movements are required, absenteeism is one of the major factor over there, and lack of competitiveness, because there is nobody to motivate in the organization in order to achieve. So ergonomics, what it does basically, it leads to healthy and pain-free workers who are more likely to be engaged and highly productive. So if the employers implement a proper working environment, considering the safety of all the employees in the organization, then obviously the working environment will improve. Then the quality of the environment or the employees or the products will improve. Then obviously there'll be the less absenteeism among the employees. They start doing work in a very productive way, and thus we can improve the competitiveness among all the employees. Okay, so this we have discussed in the earlier class. I'm just doing a quick recap of the concepts what we have discussed in the earlier class. Okay, then in the next slide, after understanding what do you mean by ergonomics and the benefits of ergonomics, so we have even discussed about some of the ergonomic programs. So what do you mean by ergonomic programs? Ergonomic programs are best performed by a professional ergonomist. So the ergonomic team or any qualified person can use the analysis program to conduct the work site analysis and identify the stresses in the workplace. So what all concepts we have discussed here? The first concept, the work site analysis program, is students basically divided into 4 main categories. The first one, what we discussed on that day, was gathering information from available sources. The second important component here is conducting, see here, all of you, conducting baseline screening surveys to determine which job need closer analysis. So what we did here in the second point, we had checklist, then we had ergonomic risk factors, correct? Then the third main category was performing ergonomic job hazard analysis of those workstation with identified risk factor and after implementing the control measures. So what we did here in the third major step, the job hazard analysis should be routinely performed by a well-qualified person who knows the job basically in and out of that job. So this type of analysis helps to verify the risk factors at a light duty of a restricted activity and at work positions. Then last, the concept what we discussed was conducting periodic surveys, by taking the feedbacks and follow-up studies to evaluate the changes. See, students, in any process, for that sake, feedback plays a very, very important role. Feedback will tell us that where we are going wrong, and it even assists us to change our direction and come to the right track. And follow-up studies, that is very important. When you evaluate something in your life or when you evaluate a plan, all of you, what you will do, I always tell my students, every day morning when you get up, so you have to set a goal for that particular day. So we call it as a short-term goal, right? and we have to even set a long-term goal. So as a student, as an engineering students now, your immediate short-term goal is what? For that particular day, what all timetable you have set. And before going to sleep, we have to do a follow-up. What all timetable we have put and whether we have done that. A follow-up studies basically in almost all the organizations. The project, whatever they have got, that they need to do proper follow-up of that, and they have to evaluate the changes. So without proper feedback and the follow-up studies, it is highly impossible to execute the project in the right direction within the stipulated time. So very important is we all engineers should be very, very smart. So when I say smart, again, I'm repeating, SMART, correct? It is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound. All of you should be having a long-term target and a short-term target. So if I ask engineering students, what are your long-term objectives or the goals? Someone will say that, sir, I should be working in a good multinational organization with a good package. And some will say, sir, I am planning to start my own business. And someone will say, sir, I want to enter into civil services like IAS, IPS. I want to serve the society, right? So every student will be having their own long-term objectives. But the question here is, are we doing a feedback, or are we following up with our goals, or are we working in tandem with our objectives or goals? So that is the question, right? See, 1 lakh students, they'll be having a dream, but how many will succeed? That is a question now. Why they'll succeed? Because of the dedication, because of their continuous follow-up. There were many startups in the country, students. There were many startups. I mean to say the companies. But how many succeeded? That is very important, right? So conducting periodic surveys, by taking feedbacks, and follow-up studies to evaluate the changes. A classic example I want to give you is how you can improve yourself is, we have the story of Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani. Correct? Was born on December 28, 1932. An Indian industrialist who was the founder of Reliance Industries. Today, it is one of the giant in petrochemicals, communications, power, textiles, and it is one of the biggest exporter. So what he did, he saw an opportunity and started working towards that. He had a vision to build the Reliance, and he did that. Right? So this was one of the concepts what we discussed. Then preventing ergonomic hazard. So please see the slide over there. So when we speak about ergonomic hazard, so what do you mean by hazard over there? See, there are many ways to reduce ergonomic risk factors and help fit the workplace to the worker. The solutions that can be grouped into 3 main categories. So the first one, as you can see the slide over there, eliminate the hazard. That means we have to completely eliminate the untoward incident or the risk. Or improve the work policies and procedures, provide personal protective equipment, and finally establish a comprehensive ergonomics program. So we have discussed each one in the earlier class. So eliminating the hazard, how we can eliminate the hazard, students? One is the most effective way to control the ergonomic hazard is to eliminate the risk factors altogether. So sometimes how we can avoid that? We have to change the tools or the equipment, or sometimes if the floor is very slippery and a lot of accidents are going to happen over there very often, then we have to change that, change that environment itself. Or work area to remove the hazard completely. So this we call it as engineering controls. So like, for example, what we discussed on that day was like provide adjustable tables and chairs that can be used by the workers with a range of sizes and shapes and that allow the neutral postures. And even I told you, use the proper tools that fit the hand, have no sharp edges. And very important is we have to eliminate the awkward hand and wrist positions. So we have the second important point here is improve the work policies and the procedures. So what do you mean by improving the work policies and procedures here? Which is again the second important step in preventing the ergonomic hazards. So very important is sometimes we have to improve the work scheduling to minimize the excessive overtime or shift work which can cause fatigue to the employees. So yesterday I was reading an article, the USA, the military system, so they have implemented one thing, that the military, the people who are involved in the military should sleep in 2 minutes. The moment they go to bed, next 2 minutes they have to sleep. How? Very simple. They tell all its soldiers that think that you are not in military. So in any given environment, you should get a sleep. So why that sleep is required? Because body requires rest. Because they are involved in a lot of physical activities over there. So body requires rest. And very important is your mind requires rest. So why that rest is required? Because next day morning they should be very active, right? So you have to change the policies and the procedures in order to motivate your people, your team, and get good productive work from them. And very important, students, here we have to provide workers with training on what? On safe working postures, lifting techniques, ergonomic policies and procedures. Today we have seen a lot of IT people who are working in the IT companies. They'll be having one or the other issue. Either some will be telling, I have back pain, I have eye problem, I take I frequently get stomach upset. Why? Because they have not arranged their entire schedule properly, or the working environment is so bad that there'll be no proper ventilation over there where they're working from home or in the organization, or they'll be continuously sitting in the AC. So we have to start working on the new policies and procedures in order to improve the health of all the employees. So the first and the foremost thing here in the second point I'm discussing now, improve work policies and procedures. So you have to provide the workers with the training on safe working postures, lifting techniques, ergonomic policies and procedures, and the safe use of carrying devices. So training is a very critical element of nearly any solution and provides an important opportunity for worker participation. Okay. And the third point here is provide personal protective equipment. So presently, in almost all the manufacturing companies, they take care of the employees, right? They provide personal protective equipment kit that can address ergonomic problems. For example, shoulder pads to cushion loads carried on the shoulder, gloves to protect against the cold vibration of the rough surfaces. And the last point is establish a comprehensive ergonomic program. Now, when I say comprehensive ergonomic program, see, employers should establish an ergonomic program to minimize what? To minimize the musculoskeletal disorders, that is MSDs. So elements of a good program are like management commitment should be there, and very important, worker involvement should be there, and training and education of workers and supervisors. Then we have to brief about the job evaluation to identify the risk factors. Right. So these were the concepts what we have discussed in the earlier class. I'm doing a quick revision of that. Then very important point was we even discussed about workspace envelope. So what do you mean by workspace envelope? We have discussed on the previous class. A workspace envelope is a three-dimensional space within which we carry out physical work activities when you are at a fixed location. So the limits of the envelope are determined by the functional arm. In turn, is influenced by the direction of reach and the nature of the task being performed. Correct, students? So workspace envelopes should be designed for the fifth percentile of the user population. What do you mean by fifth percentile? Which means that 95% of the users will be able to reach everything placed within the envelope. Envelope means what? A proper sitting arrangement wherein everything should be accessible. Okay, so after understanding this, we will go to one of the important concepts here called as visual ergonomics. So effective from today, we will discuss the new concept that is visual ergonomics. I want your concentration, all of you. Now, what do you understand by the term called as visual ergonomics? So visual ergonomics is the multidisciplinary science concerned with the understanding human visual process and the interactions between humans and other elements of a system. Now, let me explain the concept of visual ergonomics in a very simpler way to all of you. So, visual ergonomics is the multidisciplinary science which is concerned with understanding human visual process and the interactions between the humans and other elements. Now, ergonomics means what? Is a broad discipline often associated with the physical aspect of workplaces, such as the size of the chairs and desk, what we have understood. Whereas visual ergonomics is what? Is one subspecialty and was formally recognized by the International Ergonomics Association, that we call it as IEA. So defining visual ergonomics proved to be a bigger challenge than first envisaged, mostly because visual ergonomics has application in a wide variety of industries, which includes transportation, healthcare. So the population subgroups include children or even aged people or elderly people, and visually depending tasks, which includes digital technology, manufacturing. So after several years of consultation and discussion, initially with the Nordic Ergonomics Society and later with IEA Visual Ergonomics, a final definition was approved and uploaded onto IEA Visual Ergonomics webpage in the year July 2012. So the meaning or the definition of visual ergonomics goes like this. So visual ergonomics is the multidisciplinary science which is concerned with understanding human visual processes and the interactions between humans and other elements of a system. Now, visual ergonomics applies theories, knowledge, and methods to the design and assessment of systems, optimizing human well-being and overall system performance. So some of the relevant topics include the visual environment, such like lighting or visually demanding work and other tasks. So visual functions and performance, visual comfort and safety, then optical corrections and other assistive tools. So here, students, one thing what we have understood about this visual ergonomics is it is majorly a multidisciplinary science which is concerned with the understanding human visual process. Now, what do you understand by this? It's a visual display, basically, what I mean to say. A visual display, which is a device that presents information about objects, events, or any situations to you through your eyes. So today you are seeing the slide over there through your eyes, but how you are seeing that actually matters. Whether you are creating an irritation to the eye over there, or whether the way you are sitting over there will create a problem to your eye. So sometimes the display will be used in addition to information gained by observing the event, or sometimes the situation directly. But in some circumstances, the display may be the only source of information available to you. So you are listening to me means what is that? That is auditory, right? Audible. First question what I'll ask you is, am I audible to you? You say yes, sir. So auditory, where information is presented to you via your ears. So these displays are good at attracting your attention when vision can't be used. So because of the ability of audio alarms to attract attention, they are often used to draw your attention to something and as an emergency alarm. So displays will be generally be effective if they have. So sometimes we say, no, it is very far away, whatever I am seeing, or it is very close, or it is very blur. But how normally the displays should be when we speak in terms of visual ergonomics? We should have a good visibility, good comprehension, and good compatibility. When we speak about good visibility, you can easily and clearly see the displays. To attract the attention visually, the display must be within your field of vision. That is very important, and should flash or change in some other way. So humans, normally we are very good at detecting the movement. Then we have good comprehension. See, you can make the correct decisions and control actions with minimum effort and delay, and with as few errors as possible, because you have understood the displayed information. So when there is a signboard over there which tells stop, why do you stop your vehicle in the traffic? Or when there is a signboard, when the green signal comes, immediately you take your vehicle. So what do you understand? From your eye, a signal will go to your brain, and brain will send the signal to other parts of your body telling that, okay, we have to take the vehicle now, or we have to stop. Then we have good compatibility. So what do you mean by good compatibility here? The display can be used easily with others, and you're not confused by any different types used. So it can easily be seen and understood in the space and lighting in which it is used. The movement and layout of displays matches those of their controls. Then we'll try to understand the various types of display. See, we have counters. See, some students, I think you have observed, so they'll be using analytical watches, and some use digital watches, analog and digital, right? So some are very good in numbers. We call them as counters. So counters show information directly as numbers. Or some students say, no, sir, we have to use the traditional clocks, and then we have to tell the time. And then analog versus digital. And an analog display generally shows a pointer and a scale. The position of the pointer on the scale continually corresponds to the value that the display represents. Whereas what happens in case of digital display, it directly will show the numbers as a distinct values. Correct? So it is because your eye or your mind is adjusted for that. Then we have quantitative displays, qualitative displays, then representational displays. So when we speak about the quantitative displays, they show the exact information. How? See, digital quantitative displays present information directly as numbers. For example, the clock on your system or the clock on your mobile phone directly now, if I see the time, it is showing 9:08 a.m. Whereas analog quantitative displays can also be used where a length or angle represents the information. For example, a thermometer where the length of mercury or alcohol represents the temperature. Then we have qualitative displays. What do you mean by qualitative? See, qualitative displays give information about a particular state, for example, hot or cold, alarm or no alarm. Correct? So these displays can provide information about the rate of changes or the direction or the deviation from a desired value. So these displays may include indicators and warning devices. So they can be used in circumstances where only need to know that a certain condition exists. For example, when the temperature is too hot or too cold, as in the case of an indicator light of an iron box, what we use, which goes out when the iron is up to the temperature. So that is what about your visual ergonomics. So visual ergonomics, there are a few guidelines for monitor placement and lighting at workplace. It can be your home, that is working from home, or in any organization. So there are a few guidelines which we need to follow when we speak about visual ergonomics. So eye to screen distance, when we speak about what should be the ideal eye to screen distance, so locate the monitor at least 25 inches from the eyes, preferably more than that. So some students we have seen, they go very near to the monitor and see, and some sit very far away. So basically what is happening over there, they're disturbing their eye over there. Okay, then the location is concerned, the vertical location. See, locate the entire viewing area of the monitor between 15 and 50 degree below the horizontal eye level. So we say, right, at least it should be below horizontal eye level. It ranges from 15 and 50 degree. Then monitor tilt the monitor back so that the top is slightly farther away from the eyes than the bottom. So what we are discussing now, we are discussing the visual ergonomics in the office. How should be your monitor? How should be your sitting position? Then lighting is concerned, you cannot simply sit in a dark room and use a very bright screen and use your laptop or a system over there or your mobile phone. It will disturb your eye. So lighting is concerned, ceiling suspended indirect lighting should be there. So control the outside light with blinds and shades. So very important is we have to keep ambient light levels low and supplement with task lighting. Then very important is screen colors. So dark letters on a light background would be preferable. Right? So these are some of the very important concepts what we have to understand when you're working from home or when you're studying using the monitor or your mobile phone. The first one was eye to screen distance. How much it has to be? 25 inches from the eyes, preferably more than that is better. Then vertical location. So locate the entire viewing area of the monitor between 15 and 50 degree below the horizontal eye level. Then the tilting of the monitor is concerned, tilt the monitor back so that the top is slightly farther away from the eyes than the bottom. Then lighting, we should control the outside light with blinds and shades, keep ambient light levels low and supplement with task lighting. Then screen colors, preferably dark letters on a light background which actually do not disturb our eye. So when we speak about the hazard conditions and analysis, even in visual ergonomics, as we know, hazard can be defined as a workplace condition which exists or can be caused in combinations with other variables, which has the potential for accidents, serious injuries, diseases, or even property damage. Then cognition means what? It is the mental action or process of acquiring the knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and the sense. Now we'll try to understand, students, hazard cognition analysis related to visual ergonomics. See, analysis, when I use the word analysis is a detailed or a systematic examination. All of you agree? It is a very detailed or a systematic examination and evaluation of data, or even the information, the data which you have gathered, or the information. So analysis is a careful study of all the components of a work system. So in order to detect the problems, and then we have to understand the relationship between the system and the problem, in order to eliminate the problem and its potential consequences, there are two reasoning procedures which are used in the analysis. Please understand that there are two reasoning procedures used in the analysis, which can be inductive reasoning or it can be deductive reasoning. So we'll try to understand what is inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. Okay, so first I'll take you and explain the meaning of inductive reasoning. Please understand and be with me, students. So inductive reasoning is what? It is based upon the observed phenomenon. So we are observing that there is a failure of machine or the worker or the combination. Please understand, inductive reasoning is based upon observed phenomenon such as failure of machine or worker or combinations. Combinations means what? Both. Whereas deductive reasoning is based upon an undesirable event, then working backwards to identify specific components or actions which might cause the event. So the analysis made by following methods. So we'll be studying the first method, that is called as PHA, preliminary hazard analysis. I'm repeating once again, preliminary hazard analysis. We'll try to understand what is this PHA when it comes to ergonomics. See, preliminary hazard analysis means it is a hazard review conducted wherein all information is not necessarily available for a system. So this may enable recognize hazards early. Correct? It serves as a guide for more in-depth analysis. So what do you mean by PHA? The information becomes available. So the preliminary hazard analysis focuses on about the process, the product or change. So it often consists of formulating a list of hazard which might be related to materials, plant, equipments, so work environment, maintenance, and even the safety equipments. So please understand, student, this preliminary hazard analysis depends on the experience and the expertise of the staff members involved in the operation or in the project. So a team should be involved rather than a single person to avoid the biased errors. Each team member should have a basic knowledge of intentions and effects of possible deviations. So this preliminary health analysis can often serve to provide the checklist for formal safety review committee to examine many complex systems on a routine basis and to provide guidelines for the future preliminary hazard analysis. So let me explain once again about this preliminary, that is PH analysis, with a suitable example. See, preliminary hazard analysis, by this time all of you know, is performed to identify the areas of the system which will have an effect on safety by evaluating the major hazards associated with the system. So it is a method. Please understand, students. PHA is a method for the identification of hazards at an early stage in the design process. Since early identification of hazards is of prime importance, correct? The early we'll come to know that there is an hazard, we can avoid the loss, we can avoid the accident, we can save many human life. So since the early identification of hazard is of prime importance, many of the companies or the organizations have some sort of technique for this purpose, a portion of which are called PHA. So the guidelines, there are a list of guidelines. The guidelines list the entities they examine for hazards, which are starting from raw materials, intermediates, and the final products. The second one could be plant equipment. The third one is facilities which are provided within that manufacturing plant. And the fourth one are the safety equipment. Then the fifth one is interfaces between the system and the components, correct? And then we have the operating environment, whether it is safe or no. And then the last but not the least is operations, that is maintenance and testing. Now, small example I want to give you related to this PHA, wherein we'll try to identify the hazard at an early stage. How? See, the hazard could be explosion or fire. Explosion or fire can happen, right, in any manufacturing company. So what could be the cause we have to identify? It can be due to pressure buildup in the reactor, due to plug-in transfer lines. So major effects could be fatalities, or even sometimes major injuries can happen. For this, what could be the corrective or preventive measure, students? So provide pressure relief valve on the reactor tubes, or even you can provide warning system for the pressure fluctuations. That is, high pressure alarm should be provided so that the people who are working in that particular environment will go to the safe place, safe environment. Then even provide auxiliary lines with automatic switch off. Then we have recently seen the accident could be a flammable gas release in a company. So what could be the cause of that? It can be due to the rupture or the leakage which happens in an ethane storage tank, due to which what happens, potential for the injuries and fatalities due to fire or explosion. Many people can completely they lose their life. So how do we avoid that? Prevent. Preliminary, as the name only suggests, PHA. Provide warning control system. So minimize or site storage. Develop procedure for tank inspection periodically. Then develop emergency response system. And very important, we have to provide the gas monitoring system. Right. So by doing that, what I'm explaining you is we can reduce the accident, or we can reduce the loss. So the result of PHA are often presented in the tabular form. Please note this, students, which would typically include information such as, but not limited. So a brief description of the system and its domain, then a brief description of any subsystem identified at this phase and the boundaries between them, then a list of identified hazards applicable to the system, the accident risk classification, that's very important. Then preliminary probability targets for each accident. A description of human error also should be mentioned, right, which could create or contribute to the accidents. So what are the advantages of using this preliminary health hazard analysis, students? The first advantage is it identifies the potential for major hazards at a very, very early stage of the project development. Then the second advantage could be it provides basis for design decisions. So during the design phase itself, if the team identifies that there is a major hazard, so we can rectify or we can change the design at an early phase itself. And the third advantage could be it helps to ensure plant to plant and plant to environment compatibility. And the fourth advantage could be it facilitates a full hazard analysis later. Correct? So these are some of the major advantages of using the preliminary hazard analysis, that is PHA analysis. Then please see the slide over there. The second type of analysis what we use in the organization, that's called FMEA, that is failure mode effect analysis. So we'll try to understand this FMEA analysis here. See, failure mode and effect analysis is a step-by-step approach for identifying all the possible failures in a design, on a manufacturing or the assembly process or a product or service. So failure modes means the ways or modes in which something might fail. So failures are any errors or defects, right? Especially ones that affect the customer, the end user basically, and can be potential or actual. So students, failure mode effect analysis means what? Effect analysis means it refers to studying the consequence of those failures. So failures are prioritized according to how serious their consequences are and how frequently they occur and how easily they can be detected. So the purpose of this failure mode and effect analysis is to take actions to eliminate or reduce the failures, starting with the highest priority ones. So when I use the word highest priority ones, we need to understand that failure modes and effect analysis also documents the current knowledge and actions about the risk of failures for use in continuous improvement. So FMEA is used during the design to prevent failures. So later it is used for control before and during an ongoing operation of the process. That's very, very important. So ideally students, FMEA, that is failure mode and effect analysis, begins during the earliest conceptual stages of design. So when we'll be doing this analysis, it begins during the earliest conceptual stages of design and continues throughout the life of the product or service. So it was originally, begun in the 1940s by the US military. So FMEA was further developed by the aerospace and automotive industries. So students, when to use this FMEA? That is the question now. When we have to use this failure mode and effect analysis, when a process, product, or service is being designed or redesigned after quality function deployment, or when an existing process, product, or service is being applied in a new way, or sometimes before developing control plans for a new or a modified process, or it can be when improvement goals are planned for an existing process, product, or service, or sometimes when analyzing the failures of an existing process, product, or even the service. So periodically students, throughout the life of the process, product, or service, we can use this failure mode and effect analysis. Okay. The next type of review or analysis is called HAZOP. What do you mean by HAZOP? Hazard and operability review. So we'll try to understand HAZOP. after understanding FMEA as well as pH analysis. See, HAZOP has been widely adopted by chemical processing plant, identifying the operation problem. It was originally developed to anticipate the hazards and operability problems for new process. It was not the past experience were limited, but have been found to be very helpful in the every stage. So how this HAZOP review will continue? HAZOP concepts, they're very simple, students. HAZOP, this review is concerned, we normally use the brainstorming technique for a multidisciplinary team with the team members consisting of 5 to 7 members in a team. So the purpose of brainstorming is the generation of ideas. Please understand. So why this brainstorming will be done? We will be getting a lot of ideas from this particular session, because each individual will be having his own way of thinking, right? It is very unique. The way you think might be different than your friend might be thinking. So brainstorming will help us to get all the ideas. Then we will have a discussion about all these ideas. Then we will select the best feasible solution for a scenario. Right? Now, HAZOP requires a detailed plan and equipment description, as well as full understanding of the process and controls. So therefore, the team members must be experts of that area. So each team member is provided with a set of blueprints of equipments, flow sheets, and equipments manuals. The most common approach for HAZOP, that is hazard and operability review, is the word approach, which is recommended by American Institute of Chemical Engineers, which can be a simple example, could be guide words and the meaning. The guide words could be NO, which means negation of the desired content, or the guide words could be LESS, less, meaning could be quantitative decrease. Then the guide words could be MORE, more, that means quantitative increase. Then the guide words could be part of, which is qualitative decrease. Right. So these guide words are released to operation of a specific component in the system or specific part of an overall operation. So the HAZOP review defines the purpose, objectives, and scope of the study and selection of team. So team leader then will record and communicate the results to his manager. So HAZOP procedure in step-by-step manner can be summarized like this. Select the process or system that has to be analyzed. The first step, students, in HAZOP would be, we have to first select the process or the system that has to be analyzed. Then the second step would be, we have to form the team of experts, the members, which should be 5 to 7 in a team. Then we have to explain the HAZOP process to all its members. Then after that, we have to establish the goals and the time frames. So when we speak about the goals, what should be your final goal? And in order to achieve that goal, what is the time frame that has to be given to that particular team? Then after that, we have to construct the brainstorming sessions in order to get the best feasible outcome for a scenario. Then last but not the least is summarize all the inputs in the HAZOP form. So which is one of the simplest and the meaningful, wherein we can get the best feasible solution through a brainstorming session. But very important, what you have to note here is the team or the members in the team should be an expert who knows the entire operation, who are working in the project, who are basically an expert. Okay. Then we have human error analysis. We call it as HEA, that is human error analysis. So human error analysis provides, please see the slide over there. It provides what? It provides a systematic method of considering the possible errors and other human failures that may occur when performing a task. So human error analysis is used to predict human error. See, normally students, the mistake will not happen from the system. Very rarely we can see, but it is what we actually give instructions to the system. Based on that, the system will work, right? So if the instructions itself is an error, then what you can expect from the system? So human error analysis is used to predict the human error and not as a fact after the process. So although records of past accidents can be studied to identify the trends that can or in turn be used to predict the accidents, human error analysis should be used to identify hazards before they cause accidents. So there are two approaches of human error analysis which we have been discussing. The first one is called observing employees at work and noting hazard. That is task analysis approach, what we call. And the second one is called actually performing job tasks to get a first and the feel for hazards. So regardless of how human error analysis is conducted, it is a good idea to perform it in conjunction with FMEA and HAZOP. Correct? So this will enhance the effectiveness of all the process. So human error analysis, it provides a systematic method. Please understand, students, of considering the possible errors and other human failures that may occur when performing a particular task. Then we will try to understand the fault tree analysis, also very popularly called as FTA, wherein we have flowcharts, we have symbolic representation, which is one of the easiest method, and normally almost all the manufacturing companies today, they follow this FTA. So what is this fault tree analysis? A FTA is a deductive reasoning method that focuses on one particular event and provides a method for determining the basic cause of that event. So this method is used to identify combinations of equipment failures or human errors. See, everything comes here in FTA, including the combination of equipment failures and even the human errors that can result in an accident or an initiating event. So FTA allows the safety analyst to focus on preventive measures on these basic causes to reduce the probability of an accident. So there are 4 steps in performing the FTA analysis, that is fault tree analysis. The first and the foremost step is called problem. I'll explain each method in detail, students. The first and the foremost step is called problem identification. Then the second step in fault tree analysis is called fault tree construction. Then the third one is called fault tree solution, that is determining minimal cut sets. And the last but not the least is called minimal cut set ranking. Now, the first step, that is problem identification. So what do you mean by problem identification? See, this consists of defining the accident, event, that is we have to first define the accident event, then top event of the fault tree analysis, then defining analysis boundary, including an allowed event, that is system physical boundary level of resolution and other assumptions. Then it begins with that is fault tree construction. It begins with the top event and proceeds level by level. We use sometimes the symbol OR, that is OR and gates, until all the fault events have been developed to their basic contribution costs. Then after that, we have to determine the minimal cut sets, that is fault tree solution. We have to come up with a solution for a particular, the first step is identification of the problem. Then we have to construct the complete process, that is fault reconstruction, will happen. Then finally we have to come out with the solution for that. How? The completed fault tree provides us information by displaying the interactions of the equipment failures that could result in an accident. So the matrix system of analysis gives the minimal cut sets which are useful for ranking the ways in which accident may occur, and they allow quantification of the fault tree if appropriate failure data are available. Then the last step here is minimal cut set ranking. So it is also called as minimal cut set analysis. So which is a mathematical technique, students, for manipulating the logic structure of a fault tree to identify all the combinations of basic events that result in occurrence of top event. The ranking of minimal cut sets is the final step for the fault tree analysis procedure. So why it is called cut set? Because the basic events called the cut set are then reduced to identify those minimal cut sets which contain minimal sets of events necessary and sufficient to cause the top event. So ranking may be based on the number of basic events that are minimal cut set. So this is because of the chance of occurrence of one event which is more than of two events to occur. So moreover, students, please understand, the human error is ranked at the top, then the active equipment failure, then the passive failure. So we'll try to understand this fault tree analysis example. Then you will understand what exactly happens here. Let me give an example of okay. So all of you by this time have understood that fault tree analysis is a top-down deductive failure analysis in which an undesired state of system is analyzed using what? Using a Boolean logic to combine a series of lower level events. So here, in case of the fault tree analysis, what we have understood, it's a diagrammatical representation of different causes of system failure. So whenever an undesirable event occurs in an organization, we need to analyze its origin with the help of fault tree analysis. So we can check the system's reliability while stepping across a series of events in a logical manner. So generally it is a failure probability function determined by the togetherness of various components as well as system architectural logic. Then why is this FTA so important, students? Because a risk-based path depicted through fault tree analysis is the primary concern for finding the root cause of the unwanted event. So moreover, it also helps the problem solver to look for events leading to the root cause of the base level event. Then why the purpose of this fault tree analysis FTA method? The main goal is to determine the potential causes in the system failure after the happening of an undesirable event. So the probability of top events can also be evaluated using statistical or analytical methods. Correct? The calculations involved serve the primary purpose of maintainable and reliable information such as failure rate, failure probability, and even the repair rate. Then what are the benefits of this analysis, that is FTA analysis? See, a visual representational record of a system is determined to show the logical relationship between the causes and the events that lead to system failure. The analysis helps others to understand the results and pinpoint the weaknesses very, very quickly. So at the same time, it also lays the foundation for any further evaluation and even the analysis. And very important, students, when you make upgrade or the changes to the system with the fault tree analysis, you already have a steps for possible changes and effects. And a fault tree diagram can also be used to maintain the procedures and design quality test. So after understanding this, when to use the fault tree analysis, when we can use the fault tree analysis FTA technique. So a fault tree analysis helps in science related subjects, namely aerospace, pharmaceutical analysis, including computer science students, that is software testing, chemical process energy, designing fuel power for aircraft, and even designing diagnostic manuals. However, you can use it in engineering where system failures have enormous consequences, like aeronautics or even some nuclear power and software development industry, to debug the complex systems. So that is about your FT analysis. Then we have come to one of the final phase of this particular module, that is emergency action plan. See, companies that opt, please understand this, companies that opt to respond internally to chemical spills must have an emergency response plan, correct? That includes the provision of comprehensive training of employees. So an emergency action plan should have at least the following elements in the organization. So what are they? Which includes alarm systems, then evacuation plan, then a mechanism or procedure for emergency shutdown of the equipment, and finally a procedure for notifying emergency response personnel. So OSHA standard specifies the type and amount of training required. So ranging from awareness to in-depth technical training for the employees who will actually deal with the spill. So ERP, that is enterprise resource planning, is a network system which focuses. So we call it as ERP, enterprise resource planning, but here in this scenario, it is an emergency action plan which should be implemented in almost all the manufacturing units. Please understand, the emergency action plan system which focuses on emergency centered centers, ECC, then the incident controller, that is IC, and the incident site, that is IS. So personnel of emergency response team could be something like this: site main controller, that is SMC, who is the top executive in charge of the full unit. Then incident controller, that is IC, that is shift is in charge. Then deputy incident controller, we call him as a DIC, who is the shift person next to the incident controller. Then we should have essential workman, that is EWM, or the shift, people from various departments. Then other key persons, which includes heads of various departments. So that's what I discussed now. Emergency response plan is a network system which focuses on emergency centered centers, which includes the incident controller, IC, and the incident site, IS, and the personnel of emergency response team, which includes SMC, that is site main controller, then IC, that is incident controller, then DIC, that is deputy incident controller, who shift person next to the incident controller, then EWM, that is essential workmen, are the shift people from various departments, basically. Okay. See, the above personnel will be the people who monitor the emergency plan at the workplace. So in case of emergency or any incident takes place, above personnel will take care of the situation. And the last part of this particular module is decision for action. See, in hazard control, for first step, is the hazard identification. Then this should be communicated to the management with the recommendation. So these recommendations should improve risk assessment, task assessment, and even alternative solutions. So students, please understand there are three basic decision management that can be made after reviewing the information and recommendations. That is, they can do nothing, or the second could be take action to modify the work system, or take action to redesign the work system. The easiest choice is to do nothing, because doing nothing may also be correct when the remedy cannot be finalized. The cost of remedial action is normally associates with the level of risk. For example, students, remedial action for low risk hazards is expensive because they occur very frequently. On the other hand, the costs are also high for high risk hazard because the injuries can be very, very severe. So when the hazard is identified, action is necessary, whether the management decides to eliminate it entirely or simply reduces the chance of it causing an incident. So redesign is usually a long-term and expensive decision, which often involves the purchase of new and even the safer equipments. So it is important that emphasis given for the modification of the work system, because this is the way to control the impact of hazard. So in this entire module, we have understood basically the complete meaning of ergonomics, then visual ergonomics, and various types of steps in order to avoid the loss. Loss can be related to the organization or a human life. Okay, so please see the question bank of module 2. The first, please all of you concentrate, students. Define the term ergonomics and discuss its benefits at workplace. Then the second question, what is task analysis? Explain the process of ergonomic task analysis. So write a brief note on preventing ergonomic hazard. Then what is workspace envelope? Explain in brief about sitting workplace and standing workplace. Then write short notes on visual ergonomics and its need at workplace. Then the sixth question goes like this: explain in detail about the ergonomic standards and the ergonomic programs. Then the seventh question, briefly describe the following hazard analysis methodology, which we had discussed in today's session, that is HAZOP, FTA, HEA, and FMEA. Then discuss the application of FTA method with an example. And the last question of this module 2, that is question bank, is concerned, explain the process of emergency response plan and decision for action. So this ends the module 2 of the subject, that is the wide topic. What we have covered here is ergonomics. All the notes and the video lectures will be shared today in the group by Professor Varsha Madam of Civil Engineering Department. So I once again end this particular session. I thank all the students for your patience listening, and the attendance will be shared in the list very shortly. So thank you so much, students.